the mic again now.
Are we ready? Oh, Jesus. Should we put some candy coating on it?
These are all jokes I'm now going to make on air, and they'll be callbacks for us, but not for any listeners.
This will become the
great.
blooper reel. This will go in the director's cut. We're monetizing this, Yvonne? Oh, yeah. I'm not proud.
Office Hours with Karpf and Loge, now live on OnlyFans. What?
You wonder why I didn't want
I just broke Sarah.
Playing the long game there, Dave.
There we go. There we go.
Are we ready to do this? Are we, Jack, are we?
What, was that already recorded?
Does that mean?
Yeah, I've been recording for the last 5 minutes.
Oh, excellent. Great. Good.
Super.
It doesn't mean it has to live in it.
Oh, it does. Oh, it does.
The producer will have. Yvonne never has to work a day in her life. She'll just blackmail me, Dave. All right, you ready to go?
Kick us off.
All right. Welcome back, people of the pod. Welcome back to Office Hours with Karpf and Loge. We've took a brief little hiatus, but we're back now in front of a live studio audience in the School of Media and Public Affairs here at the George Washington University.
It's been like a minute or two. I think we did a bonus pod that was like, what, a month or two ago?
It was Biden dropping out.
Biden dropped out. Kamala Harris replaced him. Then I kind of blacked out for a little while. What happened since?
I just want to know how Harris is going to do. Thoughts on the 24th?
I mean, I can't see how she would lose. I can't. She's like, I'm really looking forward to her debating against Trump, the prosecutor against the prosecuted felon. I can't see how that's going to go poorly for her, and
it's a lock.
I think it's a lock.
It's a democratic rule for the next century.
I think it's a lock. Hold on, I'm getting word. Yeah, we're in the darkest timeline.
Yeah,
the darkest timeline.
Yeah. Our producer Yvonne is not at all happy with how this is going so far because apparently Harris did not win and things are all going to hell. So, but a lot has obviously happened and we are back. We're going to be doing some podcasts over the summer. We're going to be doing some live shows. If any of you book us for live shows, we'll be doing live shows. Before we start doing that, though, let's talk about what hasn't changed, right? A lot has happened, obviously, since the election. But in many ways, Trump is Trump. Like, same.
Yeah, it's what stands out to me. Trump 2 has been different than Trump 1. And I think a lot of noticeable ways.
Same, it's only just with more Trump.
Yeah, this time with more Trump and fewer guardrails, right?
Right.
But there are some ways that really matter that Trump 2 has been different and we can say worse than Trump 1. And there are also, as two guys with a pod, it's been on hiatus, but we'll bring it back, right? Like a thing that we do in the classroom and a thing that we do on podcasts is think about what just happened, how do people react to it, and what does it end up meaning? And having thought about that for the past 2 years, because I didn't actually black out, one thing that stands out is that there are a lot of moments that seem like they would matter. Like when he declared, we're going to do tariffs. We're going to tariff the world. A lot of economists that I follow were like, yeah, it's going to blow up the global economy. And the global economy is worse off now than it was. Inflation is higher than it would be otherwise. But there's also a lot of ways that institutions kind of got rattled and then held together-ish, right? So there are all these spots that seem to have effects, but not the effects that we think that they would be. And I think that's part of where we want to start off is sort of all the things that changed, right?
Sort of. I definitely want to talk about institutions, but I think there's also a lot that's remained the same. And the tariffs bit isn't at all surprising, right? So one of the frustrations that I know a lot of journalists have and certainly political observers have with Trump is none of his actions make any sense if you think like somebody who thinks about politics, right? Any rational political actor obviously wouldn't do this or would do that or the other thing. That's not what Trump is, right? Trump is a real estate guy who rented his name to things, to buildings, to casinos, to steaks, to Bibles, to airplanes, you name it. And he showed up for the party, cut the ribbon. If he could monetize it, great. But when the wheels came off, he walked away, left a bunch of other people holding the bag, right? He had a reality show where he played the character of Donald Trump.
Yep.
Now he's president, and it's the real estate empire, the TV show, but it's of the White House. So in many ways, the Trump logic to me is not at all surprising. I'm going to declare a bunch of tariffs, except you are going to pull it back. We're going to have a thing, right? We're going to wipe out a civilization unless you fix everything by 3 p.m. on Tuesday. The least surprising hot take in Washington was that he would declare victory, then nothing would happen, which is exactly what happened because it's It's the show of the thing and not the thing itself. And people in politics are used to the thing itself. You have to have a show to explain. For Trump, it's a show that this time happens to be about politics.
And also, because all of that is right, and then there's a layer beneath it where it's not just that everything gets worse, but also, like, there are all these institutions that are overall resilient, right? Like, we do still have NATO. NATO is
Are you
in
checking
worse
the time?
shape than
It's-
it was.
It's 3:06 on Monday. Sure, we still have NATO.
Right? Like, but no close observer or even vague observer would be like, yeah, NATO is actually just as fine as it was 2 years ago, right? Like, these things matter. And the real challenge is that there is some breaking point where we don't have NATO anymore. And once that breaks, or like, currently the dollar is the global reserve currency, right? There's a world where they keep poking at it and that stops being the case. And once that happens, that's close to irreversible, right? Like, that damage lasts and you kind of can't rebuild that very well. But one of the surprises is he keeps on, like, a rational president from either party wouldn't be poking those bears, right? They wouldn't be undermining those institutions. In the day-to-day, we're looking at those and being like, oh, this seems really bad. In the month-to-month, it's like, oh, it wasn't as bad as we feared. But also these institutions are getting corroded. And when they fall down, basically nothing replaces them.
Right. So, again, a couple of things. One is, I want to go to the casino example. Trump went into Atlantic City making all sorts of promises, borrowed a whole bunch of money, opened a bunch of flashy casinos, used to play cards in some of those casinos.
I spent a lot of time in the Taj Mahal in my 20s.
I think we're going to leave it there, and that'll go back to the OnlyFans conversation.
Oof.
Just saying. It's at any rate. He then walked away from the casinos, and there were a bunch of unemployed people in Atlantic City who hate Donald Trump. But the damage done was real, and it was real people. But it was limited to sort of predictable reality, and there are institutions that deal with that reality, bankruptcy courts, things like that. The problem is now he's behaving this way in global structures that aren't built for somebody like Donald Trump coming in, and eventually it corrodes. Two things occur to me with that. One is the old saying that things that are unsustainable tend to stop, and this is unsustainable. And the other, coming out of political science, because we do hot takes with footnotes, is Baumgartner and Jones and sand piles and earthquakes, right? Little bit, big jump, right? There's going to be a big jump. We know it's coming. We just don't know when. We can't predict it. So at this point, if we're corroding, we're weakening. At some point, it just breaks, right? And that, I think, is the real risk, or a real risk.
That's a real risk. The other that comes to mind for me is technical debt.
What do you mean?
So technical debt is a term that I'm taking out of, like, software, where you can spend years and years just patching up a system so that it keeps on working. But also there's the technical debt of, like, eventually you need to go and rebuild that entire system because those patches upon patches will eventually be a problem for you. Right? And the technical debt of the Trump administration, this is a thing that I think about a lot when I think happy thoughts about Democrats winning in 2026 and maybe even 2028, is the technical debt built up around administrative institutions. And take the FBI as I think the easiest example. They have spent the past couple of years getting rid of everybody in the FBI who was a professional, right? Like, they're firing people for having been tasked with investigating Trump on major cases that the FBI, like, it's just your job to investigate them. And they're replacing them with Kash Patel cronies. If they do that for a few years, and then let's say in 2028 the Democrats are back in office, a thing that the Democrats will need to spend a lot of time on is, the FBI can't actually be run just by the friends of a conservative podcaster. We need to get the professionals back. That doesn't happen overnight. Rebuilding the FDA, rebuilding the National Science Foundation, all of that is technical debt where undermining the institutions was odd and bad. And so that's probably going to lead to electoral results. Like, let's say that it leads to electoral results. You get the electoral results, that doesn't get rid of, like, the polio being back. Like, you're still going to need to go and fix all of that. None of which is fun, none of which happens right away, and all of which voters will end up saying, like, hey, we elected the good guys, why aren't things better? And the answer is, like, it's going to take lots and lots of time to patch up a system that now has massive technical debt.
Well, let's talk about that, because it's a really unsexy work, right?
Yeah.
When you renovate a kitchen, it's easy to show off to your friends because, look, here's my new kitchen. Look at my lovely new cabinets. a lot of the important work that's done on houses is like wiring and plumbing and stuff in the basement that nobody sees but costs you a fortune and you can't brag about it, right? So it feels like if the Democrats retake Congress in 26 and then the White House in 28, basically what we're doing is redoing the plumbing, which is boring. It makes voters frustrated. I elected you to do a thing. Why isn't everything fixed?
Yeah.
Right? All the liberals were angry that when they voted for President Obama, it turns out they actually elected President Obama, who wasn't a screaming liberal, and he's interested in sort of the technical fixes. So we've got these institutions, right? They're being corroded. They're going to have to be rebuilt with the boring work. What institutions are surviving? What's working? What's not?
Yeah. Well, actually, I want to do one more layer
Yeah.
on that, and then we can get to it, which is my wife and I bought a house back in 2020, which means that we had to like call in the guy, the person who inspects the house and tells you, are there things that you don't know? Like, are the foundations bad? Right. And there is in the house, it's an old house, like a beam that I forget the term for it now, but basically it's like there's this really big beam at the top of the house, and if that thing is wrong, do not buy the house because the house will fall apart. Right. And he like went and he looked at it and he's like, yeah, no, you're good, you're fine, which was good because I, as like a normal dude, understand none of that at all. Right. And every few years we need experts to like, we value experts coming in and saying like, no, those like none of your pipes work. Pay me a bunch of money and I will make them work because I don't know what I'm doing. But some of that is like in the realm of housing, we still respect that there are experts who can tell you stuff and it is worth having them be experts because otherwise things can go wrong. The grand hope, if I can be the optimist that I am for a second.
This is a weird turn of events.
Real weird turn of events. Students in the audience right now are like, I've taken a class from Karpf. He's never an optimist. So the grand hope is like part of how I think we got Trumpism was we stopped valuing and believing in there being expert administrators who like know about things like food and drug testing. And we said, no, like we're going to put RFK Jr. in charge. What's the worst thing that happens? And then measles is back. So like the hope is this leads to a rebirth of we care about having technocratic experts who can make things work well and tell us like, is that beam broken? Because we need to value that in government or else none of this complex society works.
Well, yeah. I mean, and elite rhetoric matters, right?
Yeah.
One of the reasons people don't trust experts is because a lot of political elites and pundits spend a lot of time and make a lot of money telling people not to trust experts. Right? I mean, I worked at the FDA. Those are a lot of really smart, really boring people doing really important work. But it's not, the cool stuff, right? And you've got a president who's continually attacking every institution out there, formal and informal institution, attacking expertise, people doing their own research on the internet and deciding they don't actually need measles vaccines, which is absurd in the extreme. But you
don't want to find that out the wrong way. Though I will say, if back in the day, if I had known that the FDA had a Peter Loge in it, I wouldn't trust it either. Right?
I was doing politics. They kept me far away from the scientists. Far away from the scientists. That's really
for the best.
It's really for everybody, really. Although I would regularly check in. What am I not supposed to be eating this week? Is there something I should know? But institutions are, kind of resilient, right? I mean, our former colleague, Sarah Isgur, conservative commentator, said she doesn't like this administration. She quit Trump 1, but had a lot of faith in the institutions.
And she still, I think, has a bunch of faith in the courts. Which,
yeah, well,
I disagree, but
the institutions are holding, more or less, ish,
yeah, right. Like does seem like sort of they hold until they don't, and then they really don't.
So I hate to keep repeating this, but it is Baumgartner and Jones again.
Ish. I mean, again, Baumgartner and Jones, for people who don't listen, have a theory of punctuated equilibrium. I did my undergraduate thesis on that 25 years ago. Big fan. And that's the idea of like you've got some stable equilibrium. Stuff happens and there's punctuation, there's chaos. And then you settle into a different, but another equilibrium, but it's a different one.
Yeah.
So a bit of that, they were looking at legislation, and I feel like if Brian Jones was here right now, like he might agree or he might be like, yeah, I don't know, this is chaos. Because again, like a world where NATO falls apart. On the one hand, like, yeah, I guess we find some equilibrium out of that, but also maybe it's just all bad, right? Like,
well, but there will be a new world order. It depends on who's in charge again. It's a resorting. It's a resorting of the deck.
Yeah.
Right. And I think then so Trump is attacking institutions, right? Conservatives and conservative pundits are attacking institutions for monetary gain. Let's talk about some of those institutions. So you don't think the courts are holding?
I mean, I think the trust in the courts are falling for the good reason that they're no longer acting trustworthy, right? If courts act, particularly the Supreme Court, acts as a political animal very clearly on very high stakes issues for years and years and years, eventually the assumed trust that people have in it falls away. And I think that's been happening as a result of their actions.
Okay, so quick on the courts. If the Democrats retake power and they can put people in seats, do they do the hard work of fixing the plumbing, or do they bring in a counter to your least favorite conservative?
I mean, it depends on number. And I'm very much in favor, if the Democrats have the numbers for it, that I think that they need to pack the court. If we're talking about like, hey, if you can go from a 6-3 court to a 5-4 court, where John Roberts is still shadow docketing whatever he wants, that will quash every legislative and administrative effort they do. That leaves you with a non-functional government. Like,
So-
I think they've been extreme enough that, yeah, you need to pack the court.
All right, so that institution is temporarily holding. Democrats should just yank the institution the other direction, like install the new kitchen without fixing the plumbing. This metaphor is going to fall apart pretty quickly.
I mean, I think it does fall apart because this is a recognition that that beam at the top of the house that is the Supreme
Right.
Court is so fractured that, no, sorry, you're going to need a gut reno.
All right.
Right? Like, I don't think it's fixable. Do you think it's fixable with one justice changed?
I'm more interested in lower courts.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, the Supremes matter, obviously, because they are the Supremes.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of interesting stuff is happening at lower courts. Stuff is getting reversed at lower courts, getting gummed up at lower courts. So I think for me, that's the boring work of politics, right? We all pay attention to the people cosplaying whatever in the robes, but it's the lower courts that actually affect more stuff, more day to day, and that's where everything starts.
Sure, though that to me argues for even more of a gut reno, because at the end of the next Trump administration, like, one thing that makes Trump 2 different from Trump 1
He's actually
is
gonna
that
appoint
Trump
these.
2 came in with hundreds of Trump judges.
Yeah.
People like Eileen Cannon, who decided, well, my stance is whatever he wants it to be. At the end of Trump 2, a thing we know for sure is there'll be even more of those Trump judges, many of whom were rated as unqualified before they were voted into a lifetime appointment. How do you have a functional technocratic system when people can, if they enter a lawsuit and they get the right judge, then they can just get whatever ruling conservatives want?
But the institution works only when those people retire. I mean, you're not. What else would we do with the lower courts? Right? I mean, Biden had a bunch of appointees, and so if the system works, we'll find some new equilibrium where a bunch of the Trump people will quit, or they'll go work for Newsmax or something like that, and then normies they'll be replaced by normies.
Right. But again, like, the challenge there is you would need an instigating event that gets hundreds of judges and lifetime appointments to decide this isn't my thing anymore and go work for Newsmax, or you need significant and like constitutional institutional reforms, the likes of which you and I have not seen in our lifetimes in the United States.
So that's not going to happen. So the courts are hanging on. We hope for the best.
And they're
your
hanging
optimistic
on
take?
for now. I mean, what I would say, I think the future is uncertain, particularly when our institutions get this imperiled.
Sorry. So okay.
Yeah,
Moving on then from courts.
sure.
The press.
Is this a good time for us to talk about the White House Correspondent Dinner?
Sure.
So,
I'm looking at the producer who has no opinion at all whatsoever. She's nodding yes. Yes,
nodding
Yvonne says it's a good time to talk about White House Correspondent Association dinner.
right, so like there were, I want to note to listeners, we had a discussion on Friday about like, yeah, probably when we do this, we'll talk about, I don't know, what something always happens over the weekend, whatever happened over the weekend. And there's a normal world in which we would be having a conversation about, my God, they just had the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Is it a good idea to still be doing that in this day and age? And then on top of that, a dude tried to bust in. He was one floor away from the actual White House Correspondents' Dinner, but a dude with a gun did try to go assassinate a bunch of people. The system held and stopped him, but that was then deeply scary and lasted a minute in the news cycle.
So
What are your takes?
So okay, so there's the institution of like Secret Service actually probably did its job. I mean, the whole
Yeah.
hotel should have been secured. But when we talk about the institution of the press, I mean, there's the sort of the legacy New York Times, Wall Street Journal. You know what the big ones we talk about. There
Also,
are
we have to put CBS in that list, which makes it a little dicier.
makes it a little dicier. Then also CNN then goes into that list, which
Yep.
complicates it further. Fox isn't like, but there are these when we talk about the institution of the press, they're the big companies where people I don't know, a lot of money's changing hands. We're all losing money, but a lot of money's changing hands. Then there's this idea of the press as an institution, sort of this concept that our colleague Sylvia Wasteboard writes about, where it's kind of the press, the fourth estate, right? And they're then doing their job of holding power to account, that kind of stuff, which are all being replaced by independent journalists, content creators, things like that. So where and what the institution of the press is open. And I was texting with a friend who was at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, checking in on Sunday, hey, hope you're okay. And he's not, his take is we know why we're here, but we don't have the press corps to fix this. And from his perspective, a huge part of the institution itself is broken because the people who happen to occupy it and how they make their living.
Yeah. And this is one of those things where I think the lack of somebody with a 30,000-foot view and the power to act on it really ends up mattering, right? If you work at CNN, a thing that you're doing is putting on a show every single day. And quotes about this came out during the 2024 race, particularly I think just after Trump won, where like there were anonymous people working in the press who were like, "We're so back, baby," because Trump is good for news, and also it's more fun to cover him than to cover Joe Biden. So from a like daily, we got a show to put on standpoint, if that's all they're head down focused on, like okay, we're doing great. But then if we're talking about sort of the grand ideals of the fourth estate, okay, institutionally, who is going to hold those up? Who's going to defend them? When Trump decides to attack the fourth estate, sue journalists for doing journalism, does the institution actually defend itself? We found out in Trump 1, mostly no. And what we're finding in Trump 2 is it's even worse because now we've got a set of billionaires who've decided that these institutions stand in the way. I'll actually just buy the institution.
So, I mean, sort of. So one of the things that this president does, which is wild, is he answers his phone. Like, I know several reporters who just cold called him. Yeah. And they just chat.
Yeah.
Right? Which is, I don't know, I think it's kind of cool.
But then, that's
totally
cool. But then
respect
also he yells at them and calls them liars on air and sends supporters to sue them or attack them.
Right. There's the Norah O'Donnell interview where O'Donnell sits down with him and reads like, "Here's part of the manifesto, sir. What's your response?" And his response is to attack. She's a woman who is a journalist reading something from somebody who doesn't like Trump. Like that's the magic trifecta for the Trump attack, right? And he just lashes out at her. Yeah. So he's then attacking the institution. Now Trump supporters think, "Haha, I told you so." All of those lefties, right? I've got a bunch of liberal friends who are now convinced the whole thing at the White House Correspondents Association dinner is a setup. Yeah. Like this massive conspiracy, So that's clearly not working because nobody's coming in and going, "Look, this is what happened." The political violence is bad rhetoric lasted 8-10 seconds. Right? And it also isn't news, which is crazy to me. Right? So I was sitting at home on Saturday night watching the DC United game on TV because it was raining. The team is terrible, so I wasn't going to make the effort to go to Audi Field. And my wife is reading the push notifications about the dinner. I live like 3 blocks from the hotel. And I just assumed at some point the commentators would break in, right? Because it's in Washington, D.C. You can see the Capitol from the stadium. Nothing. I play soccer on Sunday morning, show up on the field. A couple of guys said, "Hey, were you at the dinner?" "No, but I have some friends." "Oh, yeah, that was crazy." And that was it. That was the entire talk. Right. So the fact that somebody was at least planning to try to assassinate the President of the United States didn't even register for anybody, which is a whole...
So there's 2 bits that I would note on that. One is I think that this attempt is more like the golf course attempt than the Butler attempt. Right? The golf course attempt didn't last very long in the news because there actually wasn't a lot of news. Like, a guy tried to do something terrible and was stopped. That's like objectively a very short story. Whereas Butler, a guy tried to do something terrible, got a shot off, barely missed, and people died. How could this happen? Like, that's a major security lapse. Here, there's like a minor security lapse, and then there's the question of, should they have, done better security for the whole hotel? But there's like sort of less substantive news there because the system did work in taking him down before anything truly terrible happened.
It's still weird to me.
It's still weird. But then also I think that that brings up the other bit, which is we do get accustomed to this stuff.
Right.
If you and I had been doing this over the past 2 years,
right,
we would have had some very interesting conversations in August and September when the National Guard started to just be around DC all the time.
Right.
They are on my sort of normal once a week running route.
Running route, Dave Karp, running route. Let's just pause here for a moment.
It may not be showing up, but yeah, I'm trying my best now. Trying my best.
You're looking good. You're looking good.
No, I'm not. So I run around Lincoln Park in Northeast DC, and there are usually groups of 4 National Guardsmen just patrolling around the park all the time. They were doing this in August, like wearing full fatigues in August in DC. I felt a little bit bad for them, but also with long guns. Lincoln Park at all times is full of 2-year-old birthday parties and people walking their dogs.
Yeah, kids and dogs.
Yeah, like it is the most normie park, but like since it's I guess federal land, they that's a place that they patrol. But when that was first happening, I was like, gee, like what are these guys doing here with my tax dollars? And also, like I would rather people with long guns not be around the places where I take my kids. And now we're far enough along that when I see them, I'm like the guys that I saw this week, one of them's got this mustache. I just kept thinking like, brother, you're not pulling that mustache off.
Right.
But it's like it is
But that's where we
normalized
are,
because we're there. At some point, like a deeply reviled president by a lot of people in a country full of guns, occasionally people try and fail to do terrible things. Like that ends up being a thing that also gets normalized in ways that undercut and corrode deeply held institutions that we are much worse off once they fail. But like like it ends up being a shorter news story because that's a thing that happens, and if there's no major tragedy, then we move on to the next thing.
Well, it's school shootings, it's the normalization of, and then I think you're right. It is a breakdown of just a fundamental institution, a sort of decency and just old school political norms.
There was another bit of it though, which is sort of more your and my bread and butter.
Ooh.
Which is the speed at which it became stratcom.
Yeah.
Like there's a set of things. There's the old saying of never let a crisis go to waste. Right. And like one of the things that is on the wish list of Trump folks, like Trump and his team, is we want to build the ballroom. We've been building this ballroom. Currently, a court has an injunction saying we can't build the ballroom. And the speed with which they went from there was an assassination attempt that failed to therefore you got to give us our ballroom was like minutes.
Of course. Everything becomes I told you so all along. See, I knew it.
Yeah.
Right.
And that does feed in like the conspiracy theorists. Like I get how they're all like, he did it because folks, he didn't because in order to pull that off, he would need a competent FBI to help out. And we don't got that.
And he's also, that's like 3 steps planning. That's but it's the other thing though that I think that got lost in all of this is a bunch of journalists had signed a letter criticizing Trump for going after the press, and they were going to be at the White House Correspondent Center. So this wasn't going to be a happy little comedy thing, right? This was set up to be not a major confrontation between the press, but a bit of a contentious moment.
A bit.
But it's a thing.
Yeah.
But at least it's a thing.
Yeah.
Right? And now that's gone, right? Trump wants to have the White House Correspondents at dinner again in 3 weeks.
Just so he can yell at them, I think.
I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure that I'd go to that party.
I mean, I would say I don't know what your Strachan advice would have been to them had they asked you. I know that I would have told them, there's no win for you against that guy in staging a quiet protest.
Right.
Because there are going to be cameras on him, and like his comfort zone is there's cameras on me and I can perform dominance of people I don't like. If you're going to set that up for him, there's no way that you're going to get what you want out of it. So just don't hold the event or don't attend the event. There are times where I'd say, hold the event, like hold his feet to the fire because that's going to hurt that particular target. Here, like, no, he's going to be entirely comfortable looking at a bunch of people who are well-dressed and enemies and calling them enemies, calling them frauds. And if they like try to walk out, like turning that to his advantage too. He's too comfortable in that setting for that to be a win for you.
Which, I mean, it's the folklore is he ran for president because Obama made fun of him.
Obama made fun of him.
Because
Right.
Obama made fun of him. But there was still a bit of like, there was a moment where the institution was beginning to sort of vaguely assert itself. They got undercut by all of this other stuff.
Yeah.
Like we're coming close to time. I do want to do one more quick thing because I said it'd be 30 minutes, but really we meant 40, right, Yvonne? Thumbs up from the
I meant
producer.
45.
You meant 45. We'll split the difference to make it 7. A question I think I want to pursue in future podcasts. We're teeing up the future, so tune in next week.
Yeah.
You like that? It's very clever.
It's kind of the future now and then.
it's nothing could be as clever as you, Dave.
Can we get that in my annual report?
Sure. I'll have you put a little plaque on your door.
Yeah.
The at any rate,
Stay focused.
the question is, how do we get better at this? And one of the things we've talked about with bubbles on bubbles, right? We want to talk about it in future episodes, but I think it makes sense when we talk about the press and other institutions, is everybody wants to sell at the bottom.
Yeah.
Right? So if there's going to be an AI bubble, you don't want to be the first one to sell. You want to sell at the bottom of the bubble. And I think the same is true politically.
Yeah.
Right? You've got Republicans who very much would like this guy to go quietly to this good night. But nobody's going to be the first one to abandon him because they have other things at stake, either in primaries. It's still a long way to November. He can still shout at people. So where is the political bottom for Trump?
Yeah.
Because once enough Republicans agree that bottom has been hit, they just flee.
Yeah. It's a collective action problem.
Yeah.
The metaphor that comes to mind, and I agree, like this is going to be a thing that we'll get into in future pods, right? Because we didn't talk much about AI today. We're going to talk about AI.
We have to talk about it. We have to say AI. I think it's contractually. I think we have to say AI.
I don't sign contracts anymore. I have AI do it for me.
Yeah.
So we'll end up talking about that. We'll end up talking about how everything is gambling these days,
Everything
and that
is
fits
gambling.
into it.
Yeah.
But the metaphor that comes to mind is really the oil markets right now,
Yeah.
right? Because there is less global oil flowing through the system than there was before they started this war in Iran, which they sometimes call a war and sometimes don't, depending on his mood that given day. And oil markets are doing that call the bottom thing,
Yeah.
where like if investors were just looking at how much oil supply and demand is there, then the price of a barrel of oil would be going up because there's less of it and demand is the same, right? Like this is really basic econ that even I took in undergrad 25 years ago. And that's not happening because instead they're constantly imagining a future and saying, oh, will there be a change? You know, like, is there some news that changes the context of the war? Everybody, instead of focusing on how much oil is there, is focusing on when will other people think the bottom is hit so I can call the bottom so it'll go back up. And that metaphor, like there's actual oil that there's less of, and then there's prediction markets of how much do we think it costs. That's also what's going on in the Republican Party, and I think in our institutions, of there is a real thing, and then there's an expectations game. And I think largely what we're going to be looking at this entire summer is sort of a run out the clock phenomenon of, domestic electoral politics. As we get closer and closer to an election, you're going to have elected officials who get more and more legitimately skittish, saying like, oh, like he's deeply unpopular in my district and I got to run. What am I going to do? And I think we'll see fracturing their coalition sometime late summer. But until then, it's going to be I don't want to be the target of his ire. Let's see what else happens. Let's see if times change. Like that gap of how much clock do you run out before the availability of oil or the looming election gets real. I think that's what comes on.
So I think two things. One is to come back to the top of the pod, and then
Yeah.
the other is to tee up future pods. I checked oil markets right before we sat down. About $96 a barrel.
It's insanely low compared, like when you consider everything that's happened since the beginning of the war. What, like 2 months ago?
And I filled my car with gas on Sunday morning. It was just over $5 a gallon on 18th Street and S. So the thing about that, though, is the markets are looking not at reality,
Yeah.
but the TV show of reality.
Yeah.
Right? Again, this is Trump not behaving like a rational actor in politics, because he's not a rational actor in politics. He's a rational actor in real estate sales and in sales in general, right? So how much of the show, how much of this is real that I'm going to get my money back? And then at what point does he pull out, declare bankruptcy, close the casino, shut down the stakes? He's still apparently hucking Bibles, which is
And
awful.
also cryptocurrency these days.
And crypto, but it's all the sales, right?
Yeah.
So everybody assumes Trump doesn't mean it.
Right.
They just have to guess when he stops meaning it. The problem is the stakes are way higher now than they are with casinos in Atlantic City. A lot of people get hurt, right? I don't want to diminish the impact on the communities. But that's far different than the thousands of people who've been killed by U.S. bombs because he wants to put on a show of a thing, right? There's the show for bringing back the firing squads. There's a show for bringing back, none of which is real. And so politicians, markets are saying, okay, when does he walk away from the deal?
Right.
And we're trying to guess that. And though there are real consequences in it. So over the course of the summer, we're going to talk about all that. We're going to talk about everything is a casino, everything's gambling, everything's prediction markets. We're going to look at how Republicans are behaving, and stuff.
Yeah.
We're going to track your running progress.
We'll try. I'm going to train for a full marathon, I think. So maybe we'll just make the podcast me talking about the slow miles that I run. Would that be good?
No, that
Yeah?
would not be good.
Yeah.
That would not be.
I'm getting a sense from Yvonne that that's a bad idea. You're saying that too, but I listen to her, not you. Yeah. Okay, so we won't do that. Good.
As long as we get the
Haven't
win.
you missed me?
No. We'll be back all summer. Thanks for tuning in.